There's not a lot of starters available in free agency because if you're good enough to start, usually the team finds a way to keep you. But after a unbelievable year for Sam Darnold that didn't have the finish everyone wanted, but he's still going to be looked at as the top quarterback in this group. He is the headliner ahead of names like Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, Jameis Winston, and Jay's favorite player in the NFL, Joe Flacco.
How is Flacco fit? How is Flacco over like
That is
Aaron
definitely a
Rodgers?
troll, Joe.
Comeback player of the year, Joe Flacco. Call him by his title.
Joe Flacco is not a better quarterback than Aaron Rodgers.
Aaron Rodgers is not a free agent.
Okay, but he's going to be, right?
Well, he's not right now, so the graphic stands.
Is correct.
Joe
Jay
Flacco,
Croucher.
number 5.
We'll find another one. Someone's going to be better.
Flacco did nothing
Ryan
wrong.
Tannehill's better than Joe Flacco.
Whoa.
I think Marcus Mariota, I think it was only on a one-year deal.
Oh, okay.
I think
wonder when Sam Howell gets some market.
Oh, exactly. Future Hall of Famer Sam Howell?
Yeah.
No, he's still on a rookie deal. He's still on his rookie deal.
That was a rough one by Sam Howell in that primetime game when he came in for Gino.
Sam Howell's headed to the Ecuador embassy as well.
Yes.
I mean,
all right,
obviously,
Denny, break this down for us.
Look, Sam Darnold, 27 years old. He was in a very quarterback-friendly system last year in Minnesota. Really good for fantasy, probably the second or third best late round, pick that we had, along with Jaden Daniels and maybe someone else I'm forgetting. The problem is, and look, I was a Darnold guy in the summer. I was fighting Kyle Dvorak and Pat Daugherty all summer on this, and I said, no, you don't understand. You got to throw out the Jets stuff, okay? He's going to be good in this system, and he was. He checked all the metrics boxes. The problem is with Darnold, and again, I told you guys before the show, I take no pleasure in saying this. He was still, like he was with the Jets, very terrible almost under pressure. Seeing ghosts in those final 2 games. I know I'm sure Connor has great memories of that when he was with the Jets. But yeah, I have some stats here to kind of highlight how Darnold did not fare well under pressure, which was always the big knock against him when he was with New York. He took a sack on 22% of his pressures last season. That was the 15th highest rate among 40 qualifying quarterbacks. His completion rate under pressure was in line with guys like Drake May and Mason Rudolph and Justin Fields. So he just didn't thrive there. Now he's going to sign probably a big contract here. Spotrac, his market value in Spotrac is 4 years, $160 million. I could see him signing with the Titans or somebody like that. I just don't think that he can thrive outside of a quarterback-friendly system like he has with the Vikings.
I think the best case scenario for him is that he re-signs with the Vikings. That Minnesota says, you know what? We're going to sign Sam Darnold for 2 years. We're going to develop J.J. McCarthy behind him, kind of do a slow, what Aaron Rodgers was behind Brett Favre kind of deal where we're going to bring him along slowly because, again, he's coming off a very serious injury. Is he going to be ready? He's a younger player, but we saw how Kirk Cousins off the Achilles, how much he struggled this year as well. And I understand it's a different injury and he's a younger player, but still, we have yet to see J.J. McCarthy in the NFL, and the Vikings are clearly a team built to win now. So I think the best case scenario for Darnold's fantasy value is re-signing with the Vikings. But there's an argument to be made that the Vikings say, we'll let you go. And we're turning the keys over to J.J. McCarthy, especially given how the season ended.
Yeah, and I think the way that Kevin O'Connell has spoken about Darnold kind of gives that impression where he's talking about how he'll always look back fondly on the journey with Sam, which is a fairly aggressive thing to say in terms of what it implies about their future. And the other thing with J.J. McCarthy is that, yeah, I get that Patrick Mahomes sat for a year behind Alex Smith and turned into the greatest quarterback ever, but for the most part, you want to get value out of these quarterbacks when they're on their rookie deals. That is what allows you to add to the rest of your roster. And so, Denny, do you think that Darnold, he basically was getting away with it for 16 weeks and then was 17 weeks and then was exposed in the final 2 games, or do you think that he was that those were outliers?
It's hard, it's hard to overcome the image of him melting down in those final 2 games and remember how solid he was before that. But mostly in the first half of the season, especially, the Vikings kept him clean, right? And they put him in such good, positive situations where he can, throw the ball from a clean pocket to Justin Jefferson, to Addison, to Hawkinson, right? These great targets. It fell apart when things were not perfect. So I think that the image of him melting down those final 2 games, I think that'll stick with teams and stick with the Vikings, I'm sure, more than the previous 14, 15, 16 weeks. which is tough. Which is tough for him because he really did have a good season.
The irony is that I thought maybe his most impressive game was the third last game he played, where he just eviscerated the Packers and killed them over the middle of the field, and then that was quickly wiped away by those last two disasters.
He wasn't helped out by his offensive line, but again, some of those sacks were on him as well. And again, it's a tough one if I'm the Vikings because I can see both sides of the argument, but you're putting a lot of eggs in a rookie quarterback that's never played in the NFL and coming off a very serious injury.
You better be right.
Right, you better be right. I mean, because the defense is ready to go. You've got Jefferson, Addison is emerging. You're probably going to draft a running back. We'll see what happens with Aaron Jones. We'll get to that when we get to running backs here. But I think that's going to be the fascinating story until Aaron Rodgers decides to suck all the wind out of out of the offseason news cycle like he always does. But at least until then, I think that's the big free agency story of all of them as well. And I just want to say here, Denny,
yes,
I, for one, will look back fondly on your journey with us this year on Fantasy Football Happy Hour.
I only had 2 disastrous outings on the Happy Hour.
Yeah. And they weren't even in the end of the year.
It
middle of the season.
It was a tough October for Denny.
And that's all you'll remember, unfortunately.
That's unfortunately all you remember.
Right after Darnold, both Steelers quarterbacks, Russell Wilson and Justin Fields on this list. It feels like one of the two will be back in Pittsburgh as the starter. I mean, that job is obviously wide open in Pittsburgh. And then it's just interesting, guys, when Justin Fields plays, he matters so much in fantasy, Denny, but you just need the guarantee that he is the starter wherever he is.
That's right. I mean, and that's why I remember in best ball drafts last summer, I was taking Fields everywhere because I thought if this guy gets in, he'll be great for fantasy, and he largely was when he was the Steelers starter. Of course, that didn't last very long. But the problem is that his real life game does not really translate, and I have a feeling, you get the sense that the NFL knows what's up with Justin Fields. Like, he regressed so much as a passer, not this past season, but the season before, 2023. His short area passing, his intermediate passing, it all kind of tanked, and so the development stopped for Justin Fields. I don't know where he goes from here besides being kind of a spot starter, maybe a placeholder kind of guy for another team. I have a tough time seeing him staying in Pittsburgh, honestly.
See, I guess there's two conversations, right? There's the pro football conversation, and I don't feel like the book has fully been written on him. I mean, you tell me, there's head scratching decision making, right? Just some basic 3rd and 6 kind of stuff, just throw to the, just get you're just running a 7-yard route out and just boom, something like that. Or so there's some basic decision-making stuff that's head-scratching, but on the other hand, the physical skills are tantalizing, and he makes some kind of wow plays. And you think about he was in Chicago, that was a mess. And then he comes to Pittsburgh with Arthur Smith, not exactly known for developing quarterbacks. I think in the right environment with the right coach. And by the way, he's trying to do this in Pittsburgh where they've got George Pickens and nothing else.
Right, that's very fair.
I mean, he didn't have a lot of weapons around him, and I feel like he's one of these guys that we sort of point to. We talked earlier in the show about Baker Mayfield, how he's had, a different offense coordinator every year of his life. There are certain quarterbacks that they fall into the right system, and it's great. Look at what Sam Darnold did this year in Minnesota versus what he did in the Jets in Carolina, where it was bad systems, versus Fields, who I don't think's ever been. So, this is a guy that was a top 12 pick overall in the NFL draft, Connor, and somebody that, a lot of scouts liked coming out of Ohio State.
A ton of talent that's all still there. It's just the consistency is what you need from him. You would love to see him go to an offense, though, that really where the running balances the passing and opens things up and helps him, Matthew, to your point, become a more decisive player who can ultimately unlock that, because I don't think he's played in great situations. And I'm not saying he's blameless. That's not what I'm saying at all. He's had his own problems. But you just wonder if you get to that situation where things are much better around you. You have a true number 1 wide receiver. You have a competent number 2 and a run game. Can you be a game manager that can make a big play occasionally? Yeah. It's just a matter. I don't know where he's ultimately going to end up. It would be weird to go back to Pittsburgh with how things went this season.
The only thing I'm going to say there is that it just feels like they're done with Russell Wilson. It just feels like
the options become slim.
Seems to like him.
No one else does. It doesn't seem like anyone else does there. If you just sort of read between the lines of a lot of the teammates and some of the other coaches there, it does feel like Russell wore out his welcome there.
Well, the end of the year was terrible.
Yeah, and neither of them, I don't know. It does feel like they've got to sort of pick one. And to me, I feel like we talk about variance all the time. At least Justin Fields is still young.
Yeah.
There's still a chance that Fields becomes something, whereas Wilson is what he is at this point.
He's so I do think one thing, it was really damning for Justin Fields to be benched basically for a guy in Russell Wilson who could unlock George Pickens to an extent, right? It feels like that's what they were doing. They were saying we need a guy who can throw an accurate deep ball to our only good offensive player, and that's what he did. And it worked for a little while, and then Pickens got banged up, and he wasn't happy, and whatever, it all fell apart. But Justin Fields could not deliver that accurate deep ball to Pickens, and that was a problem.
Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBCSports.com and RotorWorld.com, and I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched, or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest Roto-World fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.